The thing with courses is that they're quite often seen as the first step in a membership site, aren't they? Like quite often you assume that if you want to launch a membership site, you need to have a course there. And it's something that actually, I mean, I think in a way it's true. In a way, actually, you can launch a membership site with just your coaching, just offering a bit of your time, a bit of support in that way. But it is great to have a course online when you first launch your membership site. So first thing is, I suppose, talking about how to get your first course up and running in a really easy, simple way. And I think the first step for me there is that it's thinking about something small. It's thinking about something a lot smaller than you probably imagine. That's usually the barrier that people come up against. It's the fact that people assume that courses are really hard to do, that you have to make them really comprehensive. They have to be huge, big things. They have to be so, there's so much value in there to make it worthwhile people signing up. But actually, I think that courses are more attractive, they're more successful if they're much more niche, they're much more specific. The reason for that is that, people want to have a particular problem solved. This is what people are paying you for. This is what people join your membership site for, is to have a problem solved. And if you say something like, I'm going to solve the whole topic that you're interested in all at once, it doesn't actually speak to them really specifically. It doesn't solve a particular problem. An example for me, it was a mistake I made early in the days of making my kind of swapping from higher education into my paid courses. Actually, I did exactly this. I made one that was too big. So I tried to create a course which was around how to launch your podcast. Now, that's definitely a thing I'm asked a lot about. So people come to us all the time with questions around how to launch your podcast. And that's always the first question. That's kind of the big question. How do I launch my podcast? But it's way too big. And it took me, I tried to answer that whole thing. And it took me probably 3 or 4 months to build that course. And it ended up being 15 modules with about 9 or 10 pages in each one, dozens and dozens of videos. And it was a huge barrier. It was just a total pain in the arse to put it together. It just took way too long. And I can understand why it takes loads of people ages to get their memberships out there, their courses out there because of that. What I needed to do, and what I would recommend to you, is to think about that bigger question and actually break it right down. So I did. In this case, I broke it down into those 15 modules I'm talking about. And the first one was actually in that, it was, who are you speaking to? Who is your target audience member? Who is your perfect listener? And that's a great question. That is the question that people should start with here. That's much more specific. And I created a module within that course, which was just around that question. And I could actually create a course just around that question, finding your ideal audience member, finding your perfect person to speak to. So that's the first step for me, is to find the biggest question, the most common question you're asked by your audience, and break it down, down and down and down. Just break it down into the smallest possible chunks you can, until you just can't break it down into smaller questions. And that could be your first course. Now, there's a balance here in that, you can go so small that actually it's not going to make up a whole course, but then you just go out a little bit. Maybe I know finding your ideal audience member is maybe a bit too specific. So maybe actually it's, how do I design my show? How do I create the concept for my show? And that would include audience member first. And then it would include, what format are we going to follow? And then it would include a few other things related to designing the show. So you can zoom right into those details, take that large question, break it down into smaller and smaller and smaller questions. And then as soon as you get down to that granular level, you can start to piece it back together into something that's much more manageable, much more specific. And that question is really how you sell the course from then. If you can say to people that this answers exactly how you design a successful show, that appeals to them much more than, the larger question of how do you launch your podcast.